Okay, so hello everybody. My name is Felipe Augusto if you see me there on the camera. So I'll be doing a presentation today on using Amazon Web Services. Specifically, we're going to be using EC2 and S3, which are pretty two core services here at AWS. So my name is Felipe Augusto. I'm a software engineer at AWS. We'll just get away and get started. Yeah, so who am I, right? So again, my name is Felipe. I am Venezuelan. I'm from Caracas, Venezuela. Grew up all my life in Miami. I attended the University of Miami, graduated last year. I had the pleasure of interning twice at Amazon Web Services. I interned actually in the Washington, D.C. area, but I actually live now in Seattle. Right now, I'm actually zooming in from Miami, just seeing family around here. But I did graduate from University of Miami. I got a software engineering and economics dual degree. Studied both, pretty difficult, but I did get through that. Now I work here at AWS. And then just in terms of my extracurriculars back in college, I was the president of my ship chapter back then last year. And I also, at USF, I'm not sure if y'all have an Alpha chapter, but I also was the founder of the Alpha chapter at University of Miami, which is the Association of Latino Professionals for America. So that's just a little bit about myself. So in terms of just the presentation goals and kind of what you want to get out of this workshop slash presentation is really learning the basics of Amazon EC2 and S3, really the core services when it comes to Amazon. And as well to really showcase like use cases for them and really real world examples out of them, and then to prepare you for the workshop that you will have a hands-on in person to be working on right after this. So let's just jump right into EC2. So what is EC2, right? So EC2 is otherwise known as Elastic Compute Cloud. This is pretty much the definition from the AWS docs, but it provides an on-demand and scalable computing space in the AWS cloud. And really, I highlighted the two key terms are on-demand and scalable. Those are really the few main points when it comes to EC2, that you basically can request it whenever you want, and that you can order as many as you want. And so what EC2 kind of is kind of like virtual servers in the cloud. Kind of think of it like a virtual desktop. So like whenever you want to use like TeamViewer or like go to my PC, you can like log into this instance. You can use the terminal, or you can, if it's like a Windows instance, you can actually just like log right into it. So, and you can put any workloads on there. So I'll kind of go into some use cases on there. So let's go over some of the basics with regards to it. So really the main pillars when it comes to like cloud computing that you're going to see all the time are compute, storage, database, networking, and security. I highlighted there the compute and storage. So EC2 really handles the compute portion of it. There's so many services when it comes to compute, but EC2 is a really important one there. And then you also have storage. So that's where kind of S3, which I'm going to cover on later, is there too. So when it comes to EC2, I kind of explained a little bit, but basically they're like virtual servers. They're what we call EC2 instances, right? And really the big selling point of EC2 is that you don't need to buy or maintain any of this hardware. So you just kind of go to AWS, say like, hey, I need this certain size computer, like kind of have heavier in the vertical scaling here. Say, I don't know, eight virtual CPUs, or I can get a 64 one. I can get whatever size I want. And I obviously pay for it. You pay per minute whenever you use an EC2 instance, and you get as many as you want, really. It's really unlimited in terms of that. You just got to pay for it, right? So the third bullet point is really important there. It's highly scalable. I can get as many instances as I want for my workloads, and it's also highly available. So scalability and availability are very important points for EC2. You want to make sure you can handle the loads that your product is supposed to serve, and as well that if there ever is a failure, you want to make sure it's highly available as well. So very important there. And then these are the two concepts there: vertical scaling. So when you can just grab your instance and make it bigger, so give it more RAM, more CPU, right? Or as well, when it comes to horizontal scale, you just need more workers, right? You need more instances, more computers. We tend to prefer horizontal scaling because it helps out with just load management. And as well, it can be cheaper in the end than vertical scaling. Here's just a coffee shop example of kind of like just to explain how auto scaling works. So auto scaling is a very important concept when it comes to EC2. So as I was saying before, when it comes to scalable solutions, you want to make sure that if I have a lot more customers, I can service all of them, right? So here's just a pretty simple example when it comes to that to kind of illustrate it. Let's say you have this coffee shop, right? We only have 2 customers there, right? What happens if this line gets longer, right? We have another customer, right? We have 3. and there's only one coffee shop there, only one person like managing this, only one coffee machine, right? All that stuff, right? But we have another one and then another one, right? So this is where we can start having a problem where we get bottlenecked, right? And so in this case, we don't have the capacity to just get another one, right? But with something like EC2, where we can basically provision new ones. So think of these like coffee shops as like computers, and we have like requests coming in all the same time, right? So with EC2, we can just get another one and another one, right? And we can manage it. And this is what we call auto scaling, when we just basically provision new pieces of hardware from the get-go. And when it comes to AWS, it's on demand. So it's very important there. So here's an example where here we got two new coffee shops, and we now have three queues. So the same number of people can then be serviced by three separate coffee shops. And yeah, obviously you are paying a little bit more, but it does help with regards to just scaling and it's the load management. And at Amazon, what you could do is you can put like a little load balance in there to make sure like not one specific instance is overloaded or anything like that. So there's like a little analogy. It's very popular when it comes to auto scaling, so I wanted to highlight it there. Now, in terms of use cases, one popular use case for EC2, because it's basically like a virtual computer on the cloud, one popular thing that people do when they want to, migrate to the cloud is what we call lift and shift, where we basically just take our entire application that we already have running, let's say on our personal laptop, or maybe you're a mainframe at a university or something, and you just put that all into the cloud. And so you do pay a lot less because now you don't have to, maintain your own hardware. And you also get a bunch of new, security, benefits from it, and also disaster recovery and all that. So that's kind of where the lift and shift, you're going to see that word come up a lot when it comes to EC2. And also, let's say on the personal side of things, let's say you don't have a very capable computer, so you can also use EC2 to get a development and test environment. So one popular service when it comes to AWS is something called Cloud9, which is basically like a developer environment where it spins up an EC2 instance, however size you want, however much RAM you want, and you can use that to develop your code on the cloud. And then for backup and disaster recovery, since EC2 is on the cloud, we have our data centers and all that, it is very useful for backup and disaster recovery efforts. And because you can provision really any instance size you want and really any GPU, it's awesome for high performance computing where you need that really intense workloads, basically. So here's just kind of a introduction to kind of the networking aspects. This is going to be a little technical here, but it is important to just kind of introduce y'all how this works when it comes to EC2 and all that. So the very first thing, the top right corner is kind of our computer. So this is, let's say, our personal machine, and we have like a key to access the cloud, right? So this black box is just the AWS cloud. So I'm kind of doing it layer by layer to kind of go a little bit simpler here. So then one of the main components when it comes to AWS is what we call regions. And these are basically geographic regions around the world. One popular one is in Northern Virginia on the East Coast. It's the largest region in the world, and it's a lot where all the new features come out. But there's other regions around the world. I think there's around 20 or 30 regions globally, all different parts. And typically you want to go to your closest region or maybe where your customers are closer. So that's what a region is. And then an availability zone is basically a collection of data centers in that region. So for example, in the Northern Virginia area, there's 7 availability zones. So you want to spread your architecture across those so you have a highly available solution. And then what we call a VPC is basically, the way I think about it, it's kind of like the playground for all your resources come in. So let's say you have like databases, your virtual computer, your virtual servers, your instances, they would all be housed inside what we call a VPC. And that has networking involved in there. And that's just kind of the very basic part of that. Think of that as like your playground. And then within that, you have our subnets. And so subnets are basically just like networks, so small networks in there. And what a public subnet is basically one that's just connected to the internet. It's a very basic way of thinking about it like that. And then we also have what's a security group and then an instance. So security group is like kind of like the firewall of your instance so that you can set rules, say, hey, this instance can access HTTP, right? It could be a web server, right? But by default, it's completely blocked. And so you have to enable certain rules like, hey, I want to access the internet on this instance, on this virtual server, and all that. And then an EBS, that's basically just storage. So every instance usually has storage because you can store things like the operating system, your file systems, and all that. And you can have multiple different storage types, but it's basically the most basic EC2 instance. It's like it resides in like a subnet, in a VPC in some form of region around the world. And of course, it's on AWS. So the black box there. So, and you're going to see this if you ever work with AWS, you're always going to see diagrams like this. So that's why I did want to provide a little bit of an introduction on there. But those are kind of the main concepts: regions, VPCs, subnets, and instances. Very key. And then in terms of compute services, this workshop is going to really focus on EC2 a lot, but there's a variety of different ones too. And so on the instance side of things, you have EC2 and an Elastic Beanstalk. Elastic Beanstalk really helps you with just provisioning this stuff a lot faster, maybe even simpler. So that's where you see there, maybe like host a website, they already have templates for that, right? They have what are containers. No, not sure if y'all have heard, but there's like services like EKS of Kubernetes and also Docker. And there's basically like containerized solutions where you basically have your entire application with all of its dependencies on one thing. And so with Amazon, you can just deploy those containers around the world and any particular region you want. And yeah, it's just basically a link to the actual website where this is pulled from. And then the serverless, which is basically you can grab your, instead of having to provision your EC2 instances, which can be a little bit of an overhead, you can just, let's say, hey, run like one function, one Python function, what we call Lambda function. And that's handled completely by AWS. You don't have to worry about, what computer that's running on. You just want the function to be run and have it spit out some function. So Lambda is that. And Fargate is basically a container version of that pretty much. But that's kind of a very high level of just kind of the most important compute services, instances, containers, and serverless. And again, in this slide deck, which I will share, you can go ahead and browse this around too. So now, since we've done the compute part of it, now we can kind of dive into S3. So S3 is a very important storage service here at AWS. It was one of the core ones that was launched back in 2006. So AWS started up in 2004, and so in 2006 is when you saw services like EC2 and S3 come out, which are very foundational. And so what is S3? It's an object storage service, and really the hallmarks of it are like scalability, reliability, availability, security, and performance. You're going to see all these TYs in there, scalability and all that, and that's what S3 really comes into play. So where do you use it? And that's also the logo for it. Right. So when it comes to S3, it's the most common use case for it is really hosting some form of static content. So content doesn't really change very much. And there's multiple different tiers. I don't want to go into the weeds of it, but there's a lot of different ones depending on if you want a really fast retrieval or if you're not going to use it much at all. Maybe you want to just put in your records, your database, maybe like a records database. Where maybe you're going to check it like for, I don't know, every couple of years or something for compliance concerns, right? And there's a lot of different settings for it, but here's just kind of the basic bullet points. It's all stored in like a key value system. If y'all have learned in your classes, maybe kind of like a hash table where every object in the bucket, right? These are stored in buckets, has a name, some key attached to it, and then the value is basically the file, right? So in this case, you can put like videos, pictures. See, that's a very common use case for S3. It's really hosting like media content. And the ridiculous thing, this is just looking at facts about this the other day, is that S3 stores over 200 trillion objects across all of the world, which is enormous. And that every single second, there's an average of 100 million requests, which is ridiculous. So like something like in a 15-minute presentation, you're going to get like 90 billion something requests. So pretty ridiculous. And you can see that S3 is used very much around the world. So many different customers use it. And by the way, that actually is the Buckets mascot. I didn't know we actually had a mascot for S3, but it's named Buckets. And that's Adam Selipsky, the CEO of AWS, Amazon Web Services. So I kind of dived into it a little bit, but the common use cases when it comes to S3 are really like backup, storage. So if you have files you want to put up on the cloud, you can treat it kind of like a Google Drive, to be honest, where you have your files up there and you can share it with others, host it, all that. You can also do application hosting. And then one very common use case is static website hosting. And so what does that mean? It's very cool. There's a very cool feature of S3 where you can basically just give it all the contents of your website. It's all the HTML files. You give it the index file, so basically like the root file to the rest of your HTML files. And you can host an entire like website on an S3 bucket. You don't need anything else. You don't need an EC2 instance. All you need is the S3 bucket, and then your networking and permissions, right? So this is what this little picture kind of details on there. And you can also, like I kind of said before, media hosting, you could put pictures, content, videos, all that very easy on S3. One thing, I don't know if you all seen, if you ever went to a restaurant, a lot of times they actually put the menu on S3. It's funny because you can see the link is an S3 link, where it says S3 colon slash slash, and then like the name of it, of the bucket, and then the file. They're actually just put in S3. And since they're not changing it very often, it's static. It's an excellent place to put it on S3. Software delivery, personally, my team, we do host some things on S3. And so sometimes you see like templates, pieces of software that maybe you're doing releases, you can actually download it from S3 and consume it. So S3 is not the only storage service when it comes to AWS, and I didn't want to shine a light on there. So Object, this is kind of your media, content, file, stuff like that. They're hosted on S3 and also what's called S3 Glacier. They're different enough that they're separate, but S3 Glacier is basically frequently in-access content. So content, maybe you're only using it for compliance concerns, maybe you check it like every 3 years. And so it's very cheap to use. So that's what you have S3 Glacier. We have file systems. So just like your normal file systems on your computer, on your Mac, your Windows machine, we of course have that as well in the cloud. So EFS, Elastic File Store, is a very common one. And the great thing of EFS is that you can put on a multiple machine. So you can share this file system with so many different machines. And so it's very useful there. You can have one file system for like 100 different machines. FSX is basically the faster version of this. So you use it a lot for high performance computing solutions, whether you need to have very fast GPUs used there and easy to access your content very quickly. Oops, skip there. And you have Block Store, which is basically an even faster version of that, where it's very much you just want to get to the data very quickly. And so you have EBS, Elastic Block Store, and you have Instant Store. The main difference between the two is that Instant Store, if you were to turn off the machine in the cloud, it would be wiped. So if you actually want to keep your data, use EBS, and so that will actually persist over time. So that's the big difference between that. The only thing is Instant Store is a lot faster. So that is one use case for it. So if you don't mind having your instance up the entire time, then you can utilize that because it's faster. But if you want to have persistent storage, EBS would be your better off option. And then I also provide these links to guides, is where I got all the information from, not just from working at Amazon, but also just looking this stuff up as well. And so when it comes to EC2, obviously always go to the AWS documentation, S3. And then one link I do provide here is the GitHub. So I don't know if you all know, but AWS also hosts content on GitHub. And so this is actually an excellent resource. I'll click on it there. It's an excellent resource to look at if you just want to see like architecture designs, and all that, and different projects that AWS actually puts out themselves. So you even have like some more common packages like the CDK, the CLI, and you can always just go ahead and look. I highly recommend going around here, looking through it, see what projects AWS is working on and that are open source. So I really recommend that. My team actually has a solution on there that we're working on. It's called RES. It's called Research and Engineering Studio. And it's kind of we released it just like a few months ago. And so we've been working hard at it. And so you can always take a look at documentation and kind of get a feel with how we design our own solutions too. So definitely take a look at that repository on AWS. As well, when it comes to AWS is certifications. I personally have the Cloud Practitioner and the Solutions Architect. And so if you click here, you are shown different certifications here, multiple different paths you can take. I recommend taking first Cloud Practitioner to get a feel for it. And you can actually here browse them. So there's very different ones. This PDF kind of details it. It loads the different paths you can take depending on what you want to do. So definitely take a look there. And then these are just two websites I've used to like practice. So Pluralsight and Udemy. Pluralsight used to be called A Cloud Guru. They changed names. And it's like a subscription service, so it's a lot cheap, just to kind of get a feel for Cloud Practitioner. And then for Udemy, that's a little bit more expensive, definitely, but their guides are very good. There's some very good content on there, especially when I go up to slightly harder exams like the Solutions Architect and such. But overall, that is just a quick little presentation to introduce you all to S3 and EC2. I think the session is being recorded, so you can go ahead and go back for any of my explanations once this is shared. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I think we're gonna have a food break next, right, Linda?
Yes, so we are
Mhm.
going to have a food break. We have pizza on the back. Please feel free to grab some food, some drink. And when you come back to your seat, you can start asking Felipe some questions. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah, it should be all
Yes.
good. Yeah, we'll do a little Q&A there, and then we'll go next to the workshop that Linda will handle.
Hello, Felipe, are you here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah.
What am I talking to?
Okay, so I'm going to start having some students coming up here and asking you questions. We are going to start with first person.
Hi, Felipe.
Hello.
My name's Quinn. So I recently just got my Azure certification, like the AZ900 one, just like introduction to Azure. I was wondering if you could tell me like the difference between the AWS Cloud Practitioner exam and the Solutions Architect one, and like, would you recommend me to just skip the practitioner one?
Okay, no, that's a great question. So you said you've already had like the Azure basic certification, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's great, ground there. In my opinion, when it comes to that, that means you definitely have at least a good foundation and like knowledge of the cloud. I would definitely like brush up because the good thing when it comes to cloud is that it doesn't really matter what cloud service you use. A lot of the terms are very much interchangeable. It's just a matter of like translating them, right? So
Yeah.
like for example, when it comes to Amazon, right? Like we have a service called like Cognito, right? Which is for like authentication, right? I'm guessing in Azure it's the different, right? So definitely like brush up just those differences. But I think you might be good taking the solutions architect. It's definitely very good. It's a lot more in depth than the cloud practitioner. And so that one definitely would take you at least, I would say at least a couple months of study because you need to definitely take your practice exams and
Yeah.
everything. So yeah, go ahead, right ahead, but definitely brush up on those content.
Awesome. Thank you.
Mhm.
Oh, guys, do we have any other questions? Please feel free to just come here and talk to Felipe.
Hey, can you hear me clearly?
Yeah.
Okay, so hey Felipe, I am a freshman computer science major, and I am considering options to pursue in the future. So cloud computing is one of the options for me, and I was a bit confused between what does Google Cloud offer, AWS offer, and Azure offer. So can you tell me the basic differences between AWS and let's say the competitors in the market?
Okay, yeah, that's a really good question. So when it comes to that, it honestly depends on like kind of like what you need or your services you provide, right? So AWS and Microsoft like definitely have different, I mean, the good thing of AWS is that we've been around the market. That's why we kind of have like the kind of the largest market share right now. Regarding all that, we were the pioneers in cloud computing. So we're very well established. I mean, as you saw there when it comes to S3 and everything, there are, we used very much around the world. So there are definitely like equivalent services offered by Azure, and that's why we're very much competing. And so that's why some clients choose rather like Microsoft, maybe probably for their Office products. And that's definitely one selling point when it comes to Azure. It's the Office products and the integration with Excel and like Copilot, for example. But AWS is making ground as well on our own. So it really depends on the use case and kind of like the cost associated with it. But I would say definitely on the services aspect of it, definitely we are reaching parity across that. And it really just matters on your use case. So kind of my best answer there. And just as a developer, like you said, as a freshman, definitely get familiar with both. I think that is very well. AWS has a lot of certifications regarding that, and Azure and Google Cloud and everything. So as just a young student, definitely do all those as well. I think it's very good for just education and just getting to know the industry as a whole.
Right, right. Thank you so much for your response.
Yeah.
Hello, I just wanted to say
Hello.
hi. I'm from Venezuela también. Yeah, vivo Venezuela.
Sí, sí, sí. Échale
¿Viste lo
pichón.
de la serie del Caribe?
Oh, por supuesto. Tengo mi gorro aquí, mira. ¿Eh?
But yeah, just that.
No,
We are having another question.
cool.
Just introduce yourself first.
Hi, Felipe. My name is Shane. I just
Mhm.
wanted to ask, how's a day in life at Amazon?
Oh yeah, that's a good question. So when it comes to day in the life of Amazon, very much if y'all have ever worked in kind of like an agile framework where you have like
Yeah.
your Scrum process and everything, very much we do follow that to a T. And that's very much across like the software industry. So you have like your sprint planning, you have like your backlog that you have to go through, your feature requests, right? So in terms of like the general like day-to-day life, you have like your stand-up meetings, right? So every day, for me, it's like 10 a.m., 9 a.m. around there. We have our 15 minutes of just like our daily updates of kind of like what did you do yesterday? Do you have any blockers? Do you have anything to get to next? And then like every 2 weeks, you kind of have what we call the sprint planning, where you commit to what you're going to be doing those 2 weeks, right? So you also have to take into account like your PTO, your holidays, any days off you may have, and so that also obviously affects your capacity. But generally, it's very much based on the tickets and working towards the completion of like a feature. So on my end, we're working on a feature for the last couple months, and it's going to be released pretty soon, next month. And so I'm very much excited about that. And those are what we call epics, usually for features. And so you kind of have your subtasks. Like there's different like task managers for like a project. There's like ones like Jira, you have Asana. We even have our own internal tools to handle that. But it really, in terms of just like your day to day, it's really going to be, making sure you're making progress on your task. And if you have any blockers, make sure to reach out to management and everything. And the really great part is that you do have a lot of ownership over your features. So you really start with the design, getting alignment with all the stakeholders, all your managers and such. And then you go into implementation where you kind of work on that. So it could take a long time. It could take, maybe a month for your epic, may take a couple months. It just matters how big it is and how much it affects.
Okay, thank you. That was super interesting.
Okay. So, hi, I'm having one question for you. So
Mhm.
my question is that you did mention that your team just rolled out a new product. So how is the process like? Like, when one product of AWS come from like just an idea to like an actual product, what is the process like?
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, I mean, it really depends, on kind of the team and everything, because a lot of times what you can have is like maybe the product switches hands, right? Or, but generally, when it comes to everything, one really big thing at Amazon is writing. It's very much a writing culture, very much known about that. If you have folks from Microsoft or really Meta talk about, we always talk about writing. So really, the very first, like the genesis of a product is what we call a PR FAQ, and it's very much written out and kind of like for a public release, like marketing wise. And so that document really starts with the customer, right? One big thing that we always say is work backwards, right? We start with the customer and we kind of get all the requirements from there and we kind of build out a solution for them, right? So we start there, we work backwards, right? And then we kind of answer those customer pain points and what are the use cases. And then we try to build out a solution from there. So really every product really starts from what we call a PR FAQ. It's like around a 6-page document to kind of deliver that product to the customers and everything. So that's kind of the genesis. And then you have to go through all the implementation phases. You have to go through all the epics, trying to answer every single use case. And then obviously then you have a release roadmap. So once you release the product, you have to ask yourself, okay, what's next? Because 1.0 is not going to last too long, right? You're going to have 2.0 and 3.0, right? So that's kind of where that comes in later after the fact. So right now on our product, we released it in November. We were working on it, definitely for some few months. And then now we're working on the next release. We released on January, and we're kind of doing a 2-month release schedule. And so, our teams, we kind of deliberate and we see what we want to put into each release and everything. So, and that's following the whole Scrum process, right? So that's kind of like a little different. It is different across teams. Obviously, one thing you might find surprising when it comes to Amazon is like, we are such a huge company. Every team is very much like its own startup. So there are definitely different cultures. So you kind of get used to it over time when you get on a new team.
Thank you for a very detailed answers. So do any of you guys have other questions? Please feel free to just come here and ask. Okay, so I think that's all the questions we have. Thank you, Felipe, for spending your time with us today.
I know, perfect. Thank you so much. I did send you the presentation as well, so you can share it with the students. But yeah, it's definitely a pleasure. I mean, I was the chef president for University of Miami, so I definitely know how valuable these workshops and sessions are. So thank you so much for having me.
Right, thank you.
Bye.
Okay, so We are actually not done yet. We are going into the lab section when I'm actually going to let you guys create an AWS account. It's totally free and actually implement the two services that you guys was just introduced about, which was EC2 and S3. So are we good here? Are we ready? All right. Okay, everyone have the laptop out? All right, you're just going to search for AWS free tier. And just go to the first link. Okay, we have the website. And I want to briefly talk about the three types of offers that AWS have. The first one is the free trial. Is basically like occasional free trials of a product during like a promotional period or when AWS just build or release a new product and they want to promote it. This is only lasts for a couple of months though. Okay, next is the 12 months free. This is what we are going to use. After you create a new AWS account, you would usually have 12 months free using some products mostly. And those are like the actually common products that you would need. Next, we have always free. So for some products, it's always free, but they're not the common one. So if you scroll down a bit, you would have some more details of all the options you have. So in here, tier type, if I choose 12 months free, you'll see all of the products of the services that are free for 12 months or always free or on trials. Okay, we'll focus on the 12 months free. There are three services that are very popular, including the two services that we are going to experiment and do a demo today. We are having Amazon EC2, which is basically give you 750 hours of free use. So it means that you can either have one instance of EC2 that run for the whole month, or you can have, per se, if you have three instances that each can run for 250 hours, as long as the total time does not exceed 750 hours, you are not going to get charged. The second is Amazon S3, which gives you 5 GB of storage. And we are having one more very popular service that is the elastic block storage, which gives you 30 GB of storage and which is enough for 3 Linux instances hard disk or 1 Windows hard disk. Okay, so next we are going to create a free account. Okay, the challenge for you is to create your own AWS free account. So please go ahead, do it. If you have any questions, just raise your hands. I'm going to be there to help you. So when you create an account, it's going to ask for your email, password, phone number, and your credit card. So Amazon is trying to confirm that you're a real person and not just like a robot trying to create as many fake accounts as possible for free resources. Okay, so the next step, I'm going to show you how we can set a billing alert. So we don't want AWS to charge us any money, right? Yeah, so we're just gonna try to do just that. So when, for example, when the 12 month period stop or when your instance is running and AWS is about to charge you money, they're going to send you an email to alert you about that. All right, we are going to, from the search bar, search bills and choose bills. Okay, and now we are going to go down here on budgets and planning and choose budgets. Okay, and then we are going to click create a budget. And basically you can see here the 0 spend budget is what we are looking for. And you're going to add email recipient as the email address you want to send the alert to. I'm going to add my email address. And that is basically it. We click the button, create budget, and we get a success banner in here. Okay, next we are going to start on the first service, that is EC2. So the same thing on the search bar, you would want to search for EC2 and click. Okay, so can anyone tell me what EC2 stands for again? EC2, Shane? Okay, so actually EC2 stands for Elastic Compute Cloud, I think, yeah. And okay, so we are going to set up and launch a new Amazon EC2 instance. Just go here and click on Launch Instance. Okay, just put a name. I'm going to take the example from Philippe presentation and put the name as my coffee shop. As like if you want to create like a website for your coffee shop. Yeah, so you're in EC2. Scroll down a bit. Yeah, you can search for that. And just okay, and when you scroll down a bit, you can see a button for launch instance. Again, set up a name for your instance. And with EC2, you can configure and set up your operating systems and the application that will run on your instance. It's basically, you can imagine it as like a virtual machine. Okay, so if you scroll down on application and OS images, we are going to keep the default one as Amazon Linux because we are going to create a Linux machine today. Okay, and when we scroll down Amazon machine image, we are going to keep this image because it's free tier eligible. Okay, and now instant type. I'm also going to keep this instant type, but you can also compare instant type to decide which one is good for your program. And basically, the instant type is the configuration of your EC2 instance. This includes memory, CPU, storage, and networking capacity. Okay, so we scroll down to the key pair. And you are going to choose create a new key pair. So the key pair, it would help you prove your identity when you connect to your EC2 instance from like a remote device. And EC2 would store the public key of the instance while you would store the private key, and you would need that in order to access your instance. Okay, key pair name. I'm going to choose coffee shop. Key. You are going to keep the key pair type as RSA, and the private key file format, just keep it as default, and create key pair. Okay, and the key pair is downloaded into your machine, and you are going to keep it as at a secure place. Okay, goes down to network setting. So we can see that in network is already default create for us a VPC something something, and it's a VPC or a virtual private cloud, which helps define a virtual network in your own locally isolated area within the AWS cloud. So we are going to edit the network setting. I'm going to keep the VPC as default, and the subnet you can choose, and I'm just gonna choose as US East 2A. Usually, if you keep it at no preference, it could be anywhere, but now we just keep it as the availability zone as US East 2A, and you can choose anything else you want to. And I'm going to keep the auto assign public IP as enabled because we want this to become like a coffee shop website, right? So we want other people to be able to access our website from anywhere. So that's why we keep it as enable. Okay, I'm going to create a security group, and we are going to change the group name to something more easy to remember. I'm going to keep it as coffee shop security. Okay, we down here and we're going to create a description. Okay, so next, we can see these are some inbound security group rules, basically defined where you can access this. You can either choose anywhere, but usually we would recommend that you choose some custom IP address, or in this case, I'm going to use my IP. It means that in order to change or make to access this EC2 instance, only your IP address can access it. In the companies, they would usually have like custom IP address for only people in those companies to use. Okay, that. All right. Let's see. Okay, we are going to add a security group rules and put it to HTTP. And add another security group rule and HTTPS. Yeah, as I said, we want people to be able to access our website using HTTP and HTTPS. Okay, configure storage. You can just change this number based on your needs. I'm going to put it to 10.
Linda,
Yeah.
can you go back to the last step? Thing with algorithm again?
The last step as like
Before configure storage.
this one, security group rule. So I'm just adding some more group rules as HTTP and HTTPS to make sure that people can access. Okay, are we good here? All right, cool. Okay, and we are going to look at the summary and check if everything is good. Okay, and then that's it. We launch our instance. Oops. Something is wrong. So I'm just make sure that when you put this, you can just put 00. It just defaults that everyone can access. Launch instance. It's going to take 1 minute and it's a success. So everyone able to reach here? No. All right. I'm just gonna go around and see. Please raise your hands if you're having questions. Okay, so you have successfully created an EC2 instance. All right, let's go back to EC2. And you can see one, oh, it's not. Go into instance. You can see that my coffee shop is currently running. However, oh, do you have any question? Yeah. I'll contact you later. All right. So, however, you might not need this instance right now. So I'm going to show you how you can either terminate or stop. Okay, so there are two things. So when you choose this action, manage instance state, you can either have options to stop, reboot, or terminate. So we know what reboot means, right? There are two options, stop and terminate. What is going to be the difference between them? Does anyone know? All right, so the difference is that, for example, when you do terminate, you will not be able to start it again. So basically, when you never need a website anymore, or if you already saved the resources, you are going to terminate. If you stop the website, it's going to disappear from the internet, but you will be able to start it again. And for example, companies do this when they need to do updates or they need to do some patches of the website. So they stop it only for a short time before they start it again. So we are going to terminate this and change state. And okay, it's shutting down and it's going to take some time before it completely disappears from your instant list, but it's already terminated. Okay, so we are going to continue with the second service is S3. So can someone tell me what S3 stands for? Can you say it like louder? Actually, S, S3, SSS. Yep. So service. Yes, that's correct. Simple storage service. Thank you. And we are going to create an S3 instance. The same thing, go to the search bar and search for S3 and choose this. Okay, and you are going to click this button, create bucket. And so basically bucket is like a database and you are going to add objects as like your files and your folders and every information you need into the bucket. So that is just the terminology for AWS. Okay, I'm going to choose this region. Feel free to switch it if you want to. Bucket name has to be globally unique. So let's say coffee. I'm just going to say my bucket. And I was just going to follow it by like a random numbers to make sure that no one has the same bucket name as me. Okay, and we are going to keep it as ACL is disabled, which means that all objects in this bucket are owned only by this account. Okay, and we're going to keep all the default, block all public access to make sure every item is secure. Going down, bucket versioning disable, and basically that's it. And we are going to create our bucket. Okay, so we have create our bucket, and this is my new bucket just got created. Okay, so the next thing we are going to upload the files, but which files are we going to upload? I'm going to, so you're going to go to github.com/Linda is Linda /AWS S3 resources. Okay, so everyone's able to get here? Yeah. All right, cool. And we are going to code download zips. So these are all the files I have prepared for us to basically import to the bucket. Okay, just go to your files. This is the zip file, so we want to make sure we unzip that first. Extract all and extract. Okay, perfect. come back to the bucket, the way you are going to upload your files. Okay, we're going to wait for a while for everyone to extract the zip and everything. Everyone's able to do it? Please raise your hand if you have not been able to extract your zip file. Okay, so how do we upload the files? We are going to click the upload button. And I'm going to choose add files. Just going to navigate to the folder you recently downloaded from GitHub. And so we see that we have 2 files and 1 folder. You can click on the file, or you can also just drag and drop it. Okay, so next, you're going to click on the add folder button if you want to add a folder, and drag and drop the folder here. So we have 2 files and one folder that also has 1 file in it. Okay, and then upload. And all of my objects are successfully uploaded to the S3. Okay, so you see that we have, let's look at the index.html and see what we have in here. And then you can see that we actually have an object URL. So let's see, just gonna copy this and paste it in a new web browser. What is happening? So if you remember, when we create the bucket, we actually put the security group to a very strict one. So next thing, we are going to change that in case you want to share this file with your friends or family, or as Felipe say, sometimes they do, you can put even a static website on a bucket and you want to share that with everybody. So how do you do that? Okay, just go back to your bucket name and choose permissions. Okay, so you see that we actually choose block public access. So we are going to edit that and disable this and save changes. Confirm. So ES want you to confirm because this is actually a very dangerous thing to do. You don't want your files to be accessible by everyone on the internet. So next thing, we are going to create a policy to basically set up the rules, how we want the security things to be. You don't want to make your files public without setting a policy. Okay, so next, bucket policy, we are going to edit. Try to follow with me in this stage very closely, because if you make a small mistakes in here, it's not gonna run. Okay, so I'm just gonna add new statement. So this is gonna be our basically template. We're going to make some changes to this. Okay.
JSON? Is that like a JSON?
Yeah, it is. I'm going to put SID as public read get object. Okay, next, principal. We are gonna keep effect the same. Action, we change it to S3 get object. And then we are going to add one more as resource. And inside here, we are going to put all the files that we want to make public. And how do we know which file is that? Right click on my bucket, open link in a new tab. So you see these are all the files you have in here. I'm going to keep the readme.md private. I'm going to make the index.html and the file in the CSS folder basically accessible by everyone. So just click on here, index.html. And you can see that there is like an Amazon resource name. Just copy this. Go back and paste that in here with a comma. Okay, make sure you put a comma in there. And as I mentioned, we also want to make the file in the folder accessible. So let's just come back and click the folder CSS. Styles.css, we want it to be accessible by everyone. So put it in here. And same thing, we copy the Amazon resource name. Put that in here. Okay, so do you have everything like in here? Make sure to check parentheses, commas, everything. Make sure they're exactly the same. Okay, and we are going to save changes. So we successfully edited the bucket policy. Okay, next, let's just go back to the objects. Okay, so in theory, the index.html is supposedly accessible for everyone in the internet right now. So let's check that. Go to index.html. And again, we try to copy this object URL. And paste that in your browser. Enter. And then we have our lovely websites. Okay, everyone able to see this beautiful website on your screen? Yep, that website was hosted on your AWS S3. So congratulations, you've already learned how to configure an EC2 and an S3 instance. Before we move on, one thing very important to do is to terminate this because you don't want Amazon to charge you. So we're just going to try to terminate these two. So buckets, same thing, just it's the same thing as EC2. So try to see if you can do it on your own. Create, delete. You actually cannot delete a bucket if it's not empty. So you have to empty the bucket first. Empty. Okay. Exit. And then delete bucket. And you have successfully deleted your bucket. But next time, if you have like a cool website, you can definitely try to host it on the S3. Very simple. All right. Thank you everyone for coming. And I hope you learned some new things today.